Welcome to the Mad Marketing Podcast. Today's guest is very special because he kind of stands to what mad marketing is. He's Marketing Max, as we all know him. Max, I'm so excited to host you because there are a lot of marketers who've come on this pod. But if I really Google out marketing and if I really go on Twitter, I think that you're the first name that comes to my head whenever I have to go for anything marketing. And honestly, honest confession, everybody has that newsletter which they open even without reading the subject line. Your newsletter is that for me. Like I open it irrespective of what the subject line is. So thank you so much for taking time for this.
Thank you. Well, I guess my time investment into Twitter is working because ideally when people think of marketing and they think of Twitter, I'd like to be one of the first 3 to 5 people that pop in their head. So my many hours that I spend on Twitter is working, even though I have, very few followers compared to a lot of friends and bigger names. It sounds like my time investment is starting to pay off.
No, I think you're so consistent there, and the content you post is so valuable. Last night I tweeted about people asking that, if I'm hosting Marketing Max, what do you want me to ask him? And I got a lot of DMs and comments specifically around your newsletter, which we'll come to later. But more broadly, first want to start by understanding you talk a lot about growth hacking, and your newsletter is all around that. And the part that I love and why it is the newsletter I open the most is because it's not just fluff, abstract advice on growth hacking or tips on growth hacking, but you actually break it down to, okay, now what does this observation mean for your SaaS business? How can you use it for this? And what will haters say as well? So I love that part. So I want to know from you, what do you mean by growth marketing, first of all, because a lot of people might not be very familiar with it. And if you can give us some practical examples into it as well.
Yeah, so I don't have a really good definition of growth marketing specifically. I maybe can formulate a little bit better of an opinion or at least definition of growth hacking, but I'll try to do my best. So growth marketing is really the practice of using new or innovative channels to consistently grow the revenue of a business. And if you backtrack that a little bit, it's to consistently grow customer acquisition or lead acquisition. So like all of these terms, I didn't know 5 or 6 years ago before I got into marketing and advertising. All customer acquisition means or lead acquisition means is how do you get more customers, right? You want to acquire customers and you want to get more leads. You want to acquire more leads. So growth marketing is really the process of acquiring customers, of acquiring leads, net at the end of the day to grow your business. But I think the difference between regular marketing and growth marketing is growth marketing tends to take more of a science and engineering approach to it rather than just attention, audience, how do we get as many people to hear about our brand as possible. I've never really liked the term marketing strategy because I think that strategies are constantly changing and need to be constantly evolving, and like a strategy doesn't really work. I think of marketing as a lot of short, little, small tests. We got to try this out. We got to see if this is working. We got to try this out. We got to see if this is working. And that's to me what growth marketing is compared to just general marketing or growth strategy.
So nice. And Max, you curate so many strategies from so many places. If you could just give us an example of maybe your favorite strategy, maybe the one that comes to your head always, like a growth marketing strategy that you love.
Yeah, the one that always comes to my mind is actually the pinned tweet on my Twitter profile. The actual example that I give in the tweet is how I turned $7,000 in ad spend to Google into $1.2 million in revenue. It's a pretty common strategy that I use for a lot of my clients, and I just recommend a lot of brands use, which is called conquesting. So essentially, you can make it so that anytime someone Googles your competitor's name, you show up first. And if you're trying to compete against Nike selling running shoes, you can make it so that anytime someone Googles Nike, you show up first, above Nike, even with a little bit of money. And so that is one strategy that I implement a lot across a lot of my clients. And although some people might say it's not a growth hack, I think at the end of the day, all a growth hack is a really fast way to achieve growth, right? To achieve faster customer acquisition, faster lead acquisition than normal traditional strategies or channels. And that is a perfect example where most people would think, oh, I want to make it so that anytime someone Googles, best running shoe or best shoes for flat-footed women or whatever, I want to show up first when people are Googling my product. But in all reality, there are more clever ways to articulate, or not articulate, there are more clever ways to execute these kind of standard run-of-the-mill strategies. And those are what growth hacks are. So instead of bidding on, best running shoe, bidding on your competitors, or sometimes people might even put like best Nike running shoe alternative, right? Showing up on those keywords might be a hack because it's likely going to be a lot less expensive to bid on Nike. And that they're already in the market for it. Like when people Google best something, they're normally at the top of the funnel. They're normally just like doing research. And when someone Googling like Nike running shoe, they're more likely towards the bottom of the funnel, and therefore they're more likely to convert. So there's like 10 different reasons why that is a growth hack and why that's going to help you acquire business faster. And by business, I mean just leads or customers.
So cool. Love this one. And if I can also ask you, because you've already curated and you know so much about different growth marketing strategies, if you can give us an example of a strategy or a hack that sort of seems pretty irrational, pretty counterintuitive in the first go, but it actually gives you results.
Man, you're putting me on the spot here. One that is kind of irrational, but ends up driving results, right?
Yeah.
So there's one growth hack that I think no one knows about or really uses. It was like the second or third growth hack I mentioned in my newsletter when I had like 2,000 subs. So I always think like, oh, when I hit 20,000 subs or something, I'll reshare it because a lot of people just don't know about it. It's this term called social stacking. So it's basically a hack to get social proof on your Facebook ads. So when you run a Facebook ad, you're essentially creating a post on Facebook or on Instagram that's not seen on your normal feed. And when people are scrolling through their feed, they see an ad, they're like, oh, this is an ad. But you're more likely to stop on an ad as a consumer if you see that there's a lot of comments, or at least that there's a lot of likes. If you see that like 600 people like this post, you're gonna say like, oh, a lot of other people are responding to this ad. Maybe I should like stop scrolling and check it out for a second. So there's this growth hack I use with some of my clients that are a little bit more ambitious because a lot of people, to your point, to answer your question, a lot of people who I tell this hack to, they don't understand. They're like, that doesn't work, or that's silly, or that's going to mess up our numbers. But the clients that do that, or the clients that do execute it, they find crazy success. And all it is you start running the ad with the same creative and the same copy, the same words, the same everything in a third world country that Facebook runs in. And you will start to get clicks within like 15 minutes. And so if you do that for like a day or two for like $20, after a couple of days, you'll have like 300 or 400 likes typically on the ad. And then you just switch the targeting to the US or wherever you're targeting. And now the first people in the US that see your ad will see it with 300 or 400 clicks, or sorry, not clicks, 300 or 400 likes. And then they're gonna be like, oh, wow, like 300 or 400 other people like stopped, read this ad and gave a thumbs up on this like yoga mat or on this running shoe to keep with the theme. So they're way more likely to click. So that's a great example of like really outside the box where people are like, oh, like that's disingenuous, or oh, that's not gonna help. That's not gonna like really help our numbers very much, or that's gonna mess up our numbers because we're gonna get a lot of clicks on our ad from a third world country or someone that's not relevant. But I've seen some pretty crazy success with this growth hack. So
this is so crazy. For a second, I won't lie. For a second, I thought you'll make bots comment on it or something, but it was not that.
It's not bots. No, it's I mean it some people might say it's as disingenuous as bots. They're real people.
Got it. And now, Max, I'll shift the focus of this conversation to how you've used growth hacking for your own newsletter, because your newsletter is growing at a crazy pace. It already has, like, if I'm not wrong, more than 14,000 subscribers. Yeah. And a very good open rate, which is also pretty rare in this world where you're like, your email box is barged with so many newsletters. So Want to know from you, and very funnily enough, I read a tweet of yours which said that referrals did not really work for you. And I personally used to think, like, whenever I see a newsletter with a referral, I would like sort of go if they have a prize or if they have something where, if you recommend to 3 people, you get this. I thought this is a really cool strategy, and it's something that did not work for you. So want to know from you, what growth hacks work for your newsletter, growing your newsletter, and B, what did not. And I also want to give a shout out to, let me quickly see the name. Okay, there is another Max on Twitter who asked this question. He actually wanted to know what are some tactics for growing a daily newsletter. His handle is @Max Vargo, Vargo. So he also wanted to know this. So yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yes, 14,300 subscribers, I think, as of this morning when I checked today. Man, so many things to say. Referrals work. Like, I've gotten 600 or 700 like signups from referrals. But I think when a lot of people are starting newsletters, like I get these questions a lot in my DMs, or I get a lot of like people just asking me like what's working. A lot of people, when they start a newsletter, they want like 2,000 subscribers. They want like 4,000 subscribers and they're happy. I want a lot. I want a lot more. And so the idea of pouring hours and hours and hours, and sometimes I've spent like days trying to optimize what to offer people in exchange for getting them to refer someone or getting them to refer 5 people. The idea of doing that and getting 500, 600, 700 people to refer is not worth it to me compared to some of the other channels that I've tried. I think referrals work exceptionally well for daily newsletters. And the easiest way to explain this is, one marketing concept I talk a lot about is the rule of fifths. So there's this old famous study, if you're not familiar with it, for those that are listening, that says someone needs to see or hear your brand 5 times before they decide if they're even going to purchase your product or not. And recent studies have come out that number is closer to like 15 or 20. Sometimes it's 10. I've heard other people say it's like 40. Depends on your industry, depends on your price point, a bunch of different things. But long story short, I think that number realistically is really like at least 5. And that's just the bare bones minimum. And so when you're running a daily newsletter, every day people are seeing, hey, if you refer one friend, you'll get a sticker, or you'll get a coffee mug, or you'll get whatever, right? If you're running a weekly newsletter like I do, people are seeing that ad once a week and not every day. So it's taking a month to get to that 5th touch point instead of taking a week to get to that 5th touch point, because they're seeing it every day for 5 days. So referrals, they work for sure, but I don't think that's the fastest way to grow. And I've published a lot of content around how I've grown my newsletter faster than I think most. There is no growth hack, like period, end of story. I've tried about 10 or 12 different marketing strategies to acquire customers, or acquire subscribers, I should say. I've tried everything from starting to run shout out campaigns from Instagram, like business motivation meme accounts, to obviously Facebook ads, like I've talked about a lot because I'm a big Facebook ad guy, to ads and other newsletters. I think the things that have driven the most for me, like the most repeatable that I can go back to, are just ads and other newsletters. But even then, like, you have to have ads in a lot of different newsletters to really grow. So for a while there, I was bartering, like 4 ads in my newsletter for 1 ad in one large newsletter. I was only getting like 100 or 200 signups from that. Now, again, a lot of people that I speak to, they're like, wow, 100 or 200 signups from like 1 ad. That's amazing. That's a lot. Like, I don't mean to be silly or obnoxious, but like I'm trying to think in like thousands as it comes to growing my newsletter, not hundreds. And so my goal is to get up to like 10,000 subscribers, start offering ads, or accepting, really, because I was getting a bunch of inbound, start accepting ads, and then maybe offer like a pro premium paid version of the newsletter with like a bunch more premium content, and then see how it goes. Like, see if I can really monetize this thing. At about 14,000 subscribers now, I'm making a decent amount of money from it for sure. And so now the question is, do I go back and put more money into Facebook ads and more money into newsletter ads, because instead of barters now, I don't want to barter. I would rather just pay that other newsletter
Hmm.
if I can get a cost per new subscriber at around $2, because
Mhm.
I've lowered my cost to acquire a new subscriber in the United States on Facebook ads to $2.10.
Wow.
So my goal when I do everything else is, am I acquiring new customers for around $2? And perfect example being the referral campaign. I've spent hours and hours and hours trying to optimize my my referral campaign, as I alluded to before. I charge a lot of money per hour to my clients and to anyone that wants to speak to me.
Hmm.
And so is it really worth hours and hours of my time to optimize that when I could just be spending that money on Facebook and spending my time on other more valuable things? So kind of a tangent there, a lot of different things that I touched on and covered. There's no one growth hack to grow the newsletter, but I would say, to sum it up, if I had to pick like two main channels, or maybe three main channels, like the top two are Facebook ads and ads and other newsletters. That just works. And then the third thing, I think, is just good content. Like
Hmm.
the more I tweet, the more threads I post. I have, if you liked this, you should subscribe to my newsletter. Um, like I have it in my bio, like Twitter and TikTok too. Like I used to do a lot of TikToks. I don't do that nearly as much anymore because it takes a lot more time and a lot more creative juices than for me Twitter does. But just like creating good content on free platforms that then drives to the subscriber count.
So cool. And if I can just extend that question to how you mentioned that you create a lot of content and it's really good content. What is the system that runs behind this? Like, how do you curate so much? How do you make sure you're consistent with it? Because all platforms value that consistency, right? Alongside the quality. So what is the system behind that?
So there's no system behind Twitter and there's no system behind TikTok for me. TikTok, I used to have like an accountability partner. I guess you could call that a system, where like every day we would have to post one video in our
Oh, wow.
niche, and like we have to send it to each other and we both comment on it and like try to send it to some friends. That's the only real system. Twitter, I don't have a system. I just spend a lot of time reading tweets, and I'll see
Hmm.
a really good hook or I'll see a really good tweet and I think, okay, how can I spin that? Or how can I tweak that for my audience, for my core messages? Because I
Hmm.
really have like 3 or 4 core messages that I want to repeat a million times to people. So that I just see like other hooks, other angles, and I just create stuff. As it comes to the newsletter, so I have like a running list of growth hacks that I
Mhm.
want to write. I'm probably up to like, I don't know, 40 or 50 now, maybe even more. And so what I try to do once a month is sit down and write like 3 or 4 newsletters out at once. That way that month is taken care of and I have like a bank of
Mhm.
ones that I can just pull from. But if I'm busy and I don't have that, my virtual assistant will ping me and say like, hey, we have no new growth hack for the week. I'll just go to that list, pull one out, write a few paragraphs about it, give very specific examples. Like you were saying, I always try to give like an agency example, a software example, and an e-commerce example, since I think that's most businesses, or at least most businesses in my audience. And then I take it off the list of 40 or 50 growth hacks that I want to write eventually. And I send it to my virtual assistant. She plugs it into ConvertKit, add some other content, source from some of my other stuff, and then she schedules it out.
Got it. That's pretty much of a system in itself because you sort of batch your content and then write it in one go.
Yeah, but
And
it's not like a real system where like
yeah,
every
I get it. Yeah.
Monday at like 3 o'clock I sit down and write it. It's definitely a system. Like you have to find something that works for you, but having that bank is the real secret sauce. Like sometimes you're just not feeling inspired. You're just like, oh, I had a growth hack. Like I've written dozens of them. Like there's no more growth hacks left. And then I go to
Mhm.
that list and I'm like, oh, like I saw this brand last week who blew up on the back of a playlist on
Mhm.
Spotify that went viral that they curated for, sleep. Like what? Like, and they're a sleep company. Like that's crazy. Like I should write about that. More brands could learn about that growth hack. So yeah.
Mhm. No, that's pretty cool. You're right. I mean, I know people who really have dedicated Excel sheets and very neat Notion docs to sort of post consistently and all of that. So this was the end of this conversation. I hope you liked it. If you did, just comment somewhere and let me know that we're doing a decent job. Also, do follow Max and do subscribe to his newsletter, because I think it's a gold mine out there. In the next part, we have the favorite round of mine, which is the Madfire round, which is the rapid fire round that we have. So stay tuned for the next part.